Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rhea Hope, the podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rhea White, the CEO and founder of Rhea's Raise a Light Foundation. And for this special episode about We All Have a Story, I have my friend Angie Crago Sanders. Thank you so much for joining me. So today, Angie's going to give you some information about herself. She wants to share her story so that she can help someone who may have a similar path or road or been through some of the traumas and journey that she's gone along. So thank you so much, Angie.
Yes.
So how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having
Wonderful.
me. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Let's see. My name is Angela. She already said that, and I am of a certain age, probably like 22.
We'll go with that.
And let's see. I have a tremendous testimony. I have a tremendous background. I was born to a white mother and black father in 1973, and it wasn't easy. Unfortunately, my mother's side of the family taught me racism at a very early age. I wasn't allowed over to my grandmother's house until I was like 5 years old.
Wow.
But I could even sense it then that I wasn't really wanted around.
Okay.
So it causes some things in your life that makes you step back and be like, what just happened?
Right.
What just happened? So I have 3 beautiful adult children. Let's see, that is Shanice, Michael, and Hassan. I had to say them in age order. And then, let's see, I have been at Nationwide for 23 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Awesome.
23 years. And that's just a little background.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. So you brought up a point about having a white mother and black father. So how was it like growing up as a biracial kid? Now, you said that your grandparents on your mom's side didn't really accept you until you were 5. So what about the black side of the family? Were they a little bit more open to you, or?
They were very open. They didn't like my background. They didn't like my nationality. They didn't like the fact that I was biracial. However, they accepted me with open arms. That's where I spent the majority of my childhood. They pretty much raised me. And that's where I learned black culture from my grandmother on my father's side.
Yeah, and that's important. It's important to have both sides of that. But once you are half black, 25% black, you're black.
You're black.
So having that culture, that background, just being accepted, that's huge. Because we do know that racism can exist in the black community, the white community, other communities. It's not just white to black.
Yeah.
So that's huge. That's important. So we thank your dad's family for accepting you with open arms and giving you the love that you need.
Yes.
I myself, I am black, but I am multiracial. And being multiracial, you have different hair textures, you have different features, you have different culture paths that you are privy to. So how did you maneuver your way through school? Because kids can be kind of mean. So how did you maneuver your way through school and then into adulthood as a biracial individual?
So in elementary school, I was bullied. I was bullied for being light-skinned, having long hair. Because unfortunately in the African American community, we have this stereotype. We have racism within our own generation, within our own, the light skin versus brown skin,
in our culture, yes,
in our culture. And so I was ostracized because I went to all black schools.
Okay.
But you don't fit in when you're different. You just don't fit in. And so I was trying to find my place. I didn't know who I was because white people didn't accept me, black people didn't accept me. So I'm like, well, who am I? And then on applications we're called other.
Right.
So it's like I don't know, where I fit in. So I had to withdraw into myself.
Okay.
I built a fort around myself. I built a fort around my heart because white people unfortunately did a lot of damaging things to me.
Okay.
Like I was made to eat out of dog bowls.
Oh my gosh.
I was made to eat dog food. I was made to eat bugs because
Oh my
my
gosh.
blood was tainted.
Okay.
I was sent to the basement for a son from the babysitter.
Wow.
At the age of 8. It began at the age of 8.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was culturally different for me. It was a difficult time for me. And so when I got into high school, that's when I started kind of finding myself a little bit. But then I was so militant that I went the complete opposite. I was so militant that I eliminated a lot of different nationalities, unfortunately, without the knowledge of it's not everybody.
Right.
But with that wall, with that fort that I built around myself, I was able to function.
Okay.
And that's how I was able to function and transition into adulthood,
Okay.
because I was defending myself with my fort.
Okay. So how did that play on your mental health growing up as a biracial woman dealing with all these issues? What long-term effects has that had on your mental health and your relationships?
So with that being said, the mental health aspect, I didn't realize until I was 35 that I even had some issues going on.
Okay.
But then I started seeing the generational curses in my children. Just the play on the words, the effect, the anger that I would have, because I was mad at the world.
Right.
I was mad at the world a lot of for the decisions that I made myself, or the decisions that were made for me.
Right.
Because there were more decisions made for me than I even made for myself. I didn't know until I was about 35 that I even had some mental issues going on.
Okay.
And so the only thing that could help me was counseling. I went through counseling.
Good.
I had to go through counseling.
Good. Okay. How long did you stay in counseling, and did it involve family or was it just yourself?
It was just myself,
Okay.
but now I'm wishing, you know how you can wish you could go back? I wish
Yes.
that I had included my family, because my whole family as a whole is suffering from some form of either depression or anxiety, anger, bitterness, unforgiveness.
Yes,
Unforgiveness is huge in
Yes.
our family. So unfortunately, you can say hi to me the wrong way, and then it's like, I don't want to speak to her no more. I didn't like how she said hi.
Right.
So I wish I had included the family, and even I wish I had included my children, but at that time I needed it for myself.
Good. Well, we have to start with ourselves, because we can't help others until we help ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's huge. And I'm so glad that you spoke about getting counseling. That's big in our community. We need more people to reach out, to get counseling, to see a therapist, to work through these issues and not carry that into adulthood, because they then go into the workplace and they project that hurt and that anger onto their counterparts and peers in the workplace. They bring it into their relationships. So then your partner's like, well, what's going on? Because you're projecting all of this hurt onto those around you. Our friendships suffer, our family relationships suffer, our partnerships suffer. Everything suffers if we don't get counseling and therapy, and we just kind of deal with it ourselves. So that's huge, and we're so glad that you recognize that and that you're doing something for yourself. So how did you, once you worked through that and you went through counseling, what did you do for yourself outside of counseling? How were you able to make it this far? Because now you are doing so great. You've been at your job for 22 years. That takes dedication and passion and discipline. So you're still a shining example of a positive individual that's doing good for themselves. So how do you continue that?
You continue through recognizing the need within yourself. There's been times where I've had to do a pop-up counseling session. Especially now that I'm married, I really rely on counseling, because we went through counseling before we got married.
Great.
Because there were things that, he had never been married, I had never been married, we're a little up in age, and so we wanted to make sure that we were one accord, on the same page. And so with that being said, I continue to do pop-up counseling sessions. Nationwide pays for it.
Nice.
for the most part.
Awesome.
They'll
Great.
pay up to like 18 sessions, like every 5 years or so. So I utilize it frequently.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
And are you vulnerable with your husband? And congratulations, by the way. But are you vulnerable with him? And are you open? Does he know some of your stories, your background and history?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he knows. I'm a very transparent person, so it can be a random person on the street and if they ask me the right question, they might get my whole life story. Like, it's not a secret, because how can we all grow? How can we grow if I hold on to what I went through myself?
Exactly.
So yes, he knows that I'm very transparent. He knows that I'm open, and he knows that like, I don't have any secrets.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Well, we appreciate you sharing that. Next I want to know, how do we help the next generation? How do we help those that maybe have the same trauma or issues as you, but have not quite dealt with it? Like you said, you were 35 when you discovered or learned or accepted the fact that you had some type of mental issues or issues that you needed to deal with. How do we help the younger generation recognize and get help before they're 35?
Ooh. Well, from a family perspective, if we recognize something in our kids, then we need to support them and talk to them about the significance of counseling.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how we reach that younger generation that might not want to be reached.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to be reached before I was 35. So
Right.
I don't know, but I think transparency, being open, being available.
Okay.
I think those are 3 of the major things that would help them see.
Right.
And if we're transparent with them, because at the end of the day, we all like honesty. We all like discipline. And so if we see somebody that's out of order, and talk to them out in love.
Right.
Talk to them in love.
Okay, great. So what did you recognize within yourself at the age of 35? Was there one particular thing, or were there a series of things that you recognized at 35 that said, look, I need to get help? There's something wrong internally.
Yeah, it was a series of things.
Okay.
It was like a domino effect.
Okay.
One, even being on my job, thankfully they kept me because I was known as, like, I love making people laugh. I've always been silly, always been extremely silly. But I was known on my job as the woman who knew it. I could do my job very well, but depending on how she feels, you might get you might get talked to today. You might not, because I did not know how to differentiate work from home life.
Okay.
And my home life was kind of miserable, so I took it to work with me.
Okay.
And so I noticed that it was a trickle down effect. I was taking my anger out on people that didn't even know me. You know, like somebody at work would speak to me and I wouldn't speak back because I didn't feel like talking that day.
Okay.
Or, you know, so I noticed that it was a trickle down effect. And then me and my daughter started kind of butting heads. But I could see the bad things that were in me trembling down to her.
Okay.
And so I was like, I knew that I needed to get help first in order to be the example of her being, what I want to say, not corrected, but her getting into on the right path for herself.
Okay, and that's huge. That's important that we stop it before it manifests too much in our kids. So seeking treatment, recognizing our own battles, helping our kids to recognize their battles and the behaviors that are learned or something that they see us doing. So it's important that we try to reach out before it does manifest into something else. But with that, how did you learn how to deal with your own children? Because you went from being biracial to having all Black children, right? So did you speak to them differently? Did you try to avoid some of the topics and conversations that you had with your mother? Did you treat them a little bit different?
I treated them different, but there's one thing that I can see now that my children, because my children are 34, 28, and 25.
Okay.
I can see, I wish I would have been more of a nurturer.
Okay.
I was a stern parent. I raised my children in the Linden area. The Linden area has always been known to not be a safe background. And so I kept them so busy in sports that they didn't have time for anything else.
Okay.
I wish that I would have had that nurturing love for them, but I thought that they would know that I loved them because I was always there.
Right.
And so for me, the difference in how I treated my children, and I was taught that what goes on in this house stays in this house, which is a very dangerous place to put your children if they're being abused.
Yes.
So I was never open about some of the things that I went through because I was told to shut up. So I taught my children to speak up.
Good.
Granted, there was times where I wanted them to not speak up. You know, like when they're not doing good in school and all those things. But I told them that we don't have secrets.
Good.
I don't care if they say they're going to kill your mother. You tell me anyway, because I was a single mother. I don't care. You tell me anyway. And so with that, I taught them that they have a mindset for themselves. Speak up. If it's not right, don't do it. If you feel in your gut that it's not the right thing to do, don't do it. So I've always been very transparent with my children, very honest with my children. They didn't know some of the experiences that I went through, but they also knew that I was like extremely overprotective. And so once they became older as adults, I was able to tell them some of the things that I experienced. And then they better understood why I parented the way I did.
Right.
But with them, I also wanted to keep them culturally aware. And so they all went to Afrocentric.
Okay.
And because there's cultural things as a biracial person that I couldn't teach my children.
Right.
I couldn't teach them to love themselves because I wasn't taught that. I couldn't teach them to love their skin and fight for your skin because I wasn't taught that. I was taught to hate myself. And so because I was taught to hate myself, I taught them the complete opposite.
Wow.
And so that's what I tried to do for them. And yeah, now they're overly confident.
There's nothing wrong with that. We always encourage self-love.
Yes.
We want to encourage that. However they get that, having a strong mom, being taught that it's okay to speak up, that's huge. Being okay to say, look, we don't have secrets, come to me if there's something you need help with. More of us need that in our households. So that's huge, and we appreciate that. It looks like you're doing great. But where do you see yourself going forward with this? Do you see yourself continuing to help people with this? Do you see yourself changing careers? I mean, because you're so good at motivating us and sharing your story. Where do you see yourself going forward with your story?
So, why do you bring up changing careers? I call myself a street evangelist.
Okay.
So I go out to drug-infested communities. I go out to homeless camps. I go out to prostitution rings, and I try to educate through that way, especially with dependency, because a lot of times the African American culture or community, we don't feel as if we can connect.
Right.
I also was a legal drug addict, but I didn't know that I was a drug addict because I felt as if I was better than because I was getting mine from the doctor.
Oh, wow.
There was a point where I was in the hospital for like almost 7 months, and that whole time I was on morphine. So of course when I get out, I'm addicted to morphine. I don't think anything else about it.
Right.
And so I was addicted to over-the-counter pills, pain pills for about 3 years before it dawned on me, wait a minute, you're going to this doctor, you're going to that doctor, you're going to that doctor.
Right.
And because I had good insurance and a good job and it appeared as if I had it all together, I got what I was going for.
Exactly.
So I have been taking counseling sessions to teach, to counsel. So eventually I want to get back into school so I can be that counselor. And I just started a mentorship ministry at my church. Because it's needed in the church, it's needed everywhere. So I have mentors. So if I started a mentorship, and I'm going towards that way. But you kind of get comfortable when you've been somewhere for 23 years, and I get a month and a half of vacation, and
Right.
I have seniority. So, but it's time for me to get out of my comfort zone.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. And if there's anything that we can do, just let us know. We would love to help you with your street ministry, with your mentorship program. It's very much needed. I always believe that if we can get to the youth before they become adults and enter into the workplace and enter into these relationships, that we can give them a better chance at healing. So that's a very important what you do, and we thank you for that. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share? If there's any words of encouragement that you can give to our listeners on how to turn your life around and be the best version of themselves.
I strongly advise counseling. I know we, as an African American culture, we tend to run from counseling. It doesn't hurt, harm, or danger us to get help for ourselves. It doesn't hurt, harm, or endanger us to become knowledgeable about the things that we don't know. Because a lot of the things that were trickled down on us were also trickled down on our parents, our families, because they come from different eras. So I hugely recommend counseling, being accountable for yourself.
Absolutely.
Counseling and responsibility.
Yes.
With those three things, we'll all make the world a better place.
Yes.
But recognizing you when you need help. If you notice that it's a habit, you notice that it becomes you can track it. You can track your habits, and it's the same pattern over and over again. There's some, not necessarily mental illness in that, but there is some
There's some patterns of leading towards mental
Yes.
issues. Yeah.
So whenever you recognize, because we can recognize the habits within ourselves. For me, I'm addicted to perfume. So I notice whenever I start getting sad or whatever, I'll go out and start looking at perfumes. And of course, I want like all the expensive perfumes. And so it becomes an obsession with me. So when you notice that something becomes an obsession, sit down, think about it, and then if need be, get help.
Right.
That's what this podcast is for. That's what we have people in our community that are counselors.
Yeah.
Look at this beautiful face
Oh,
right
thank
here.
you.
but it's there for a reason, and we have to stop running from it. We have to embrace it, and we have to stop putting, I don't want the label. Who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
That was a blessing. That was a word right there.
Thank you.
Don't be ashamed. Get help. If you notice a pattern, reach out. Be vulnerable. That's the only way we can help you heal, is if you tell someone and be accountable. Be true to yourself. Self-love includes recognizing your weaknesses along with your strengths, because we're going to help turn those weaknesses into new strengths.
Yes.
So reach out. We want to thank Angie so much for coming on Ray of Hope, the podcast. We would love to have her back to tell more of her story and to give more encouraging words about how she turned herself around. Again, congratulations on the marriage and the newfound freedom. Yes,
Yeah.
we love it. But thank you so much for tuning in to Ray of Hope, the podcast. You can visit us on our website at www.rayasrazorlight.info. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And last but not least, I have to give a shout out to She 614 Boutique in Westerville for the outfit. You can get the butt lift pants and the jacket available on their website. They're located in Westerville, Ohio. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.